Coming up, calls for justice for the victims of the Birmingham pub bombings. A former police officer says there's been a conspiracy.
Plus the man in a nurse's uniform who made athletics history by setting a new record.
And splat, we celebrate 40 years of Tis Was Fun. That's coming up at 6. Coming up, calls for justice for the victims of the Birmingham pub bombings. A former police officer says there's been a conspiracy.
Now the latest from ITV News Central in the Midlands.
Hello and welcome. On the programme tonight, calls for justice for the victims of the Birmingham pub bombings. A former police officer says there's been a conspiracy.
The postcode lottery in the treatment of postnatal depression.
It saved my marriage and it potentially saved my life.
One defeat too many. Birmingham City sack manager Lee Clark with the team just 1 point above the relegation places.
And the stars of infamous Tis Was reunite, Phantom Flan Flinger included.
Good evening. A former West Midlands police officer says he believes there's been a conspiracy to prevent the truth emerging about the men responsible for the Birmingham pub bombings. Bill Craig, whose brother died in the terrorist atrocity, claims to have been told his old force knows the identities of 5 men who planted the bombs but escaped justice.
Well, next month a concert will be held for the 21 victims, and this week a new song will be released in their memory. The songwriters say it's time for the truth to come out, to give justice to those who died and their relatives. Keith Wilkinson reports.
A powerful song about a night of disaster. The night 21 people died in the Birmingham pub bombings.
Oh, I hear the cry, and I feel the pain.
These musicians are among those joining growing calls for justice for the 21. 40 years on, it's a mass murder that remains unsolved.
And to think that they were killed and nothing's been done for them, nothing at all. From that day on, November the 21st to today, nothing has been done for them. And hopefully the song will help the public to realise what a big injustice has happened here in the heart of England.
As the 40th anniversary of the bombings approaches on November 21st, West Midlands police are finding themselves under renewed pressure to find the culprits. The 6 men originally jailed for the atrocity had their convictions quashed amid claims that other men, who were even named in a TV documentary, had made and planted the bombs. Now a former West Midlands police officer is joining calls for the force to reopen the case. This is him in his younger days, and this is his brother, Jimmy Craig. He was killed in the bombings, the last of the victims to die. The retired officer claims to have been told by a senior figure in the force that officers know exactly who killed Jimmy and the others.
And then he said, "I can tell you, Bill, we know who committed the Birmingham pub bombings. There was 5 of them. 2 of them are dead, died some years ago. But you know what it's like, Bill, you were in the job. We have not got enough evidence to put before the Crown Prosecution Service."
Former police constable Bill Craig served with the police in the 1960s and 1980s. In April, he took part in a meeting with the West Midlands Chief Constable and the families of victims. A controversial meeting which was told there was insufficient evidence to reinvestigate the case.
And then the Chief Constable started talking, and he come to a point and he said that in 1991, 5 men were spoken to. And I said to Mr Sims, did these 5 people commit the Birmingham pub bombings? And he said, no, Bill, they were only suspects. I said, well, that man sitting on your left 3 weeks ago was in my house, and he told me that you know who committed the Birmingham pub bombings. And of course this man said, I never said that. I said, you did.
The same day, the Chief Constable revealed that police had lost vital evidence that could have given forensic clues, including an entire bomb that didn't go off.
This is the 3rd bomb that is missing.
This is the 3rd bomb.
The retired officer suspects that years ago there was a cover-up to stop the truth coming out.
So does it make you feel ashamed in some way to have been part of the West Midlands Police in the past?
Well, it does, because there is a conspiracy. I don't know what it is, but there is a conspiracy.
West Midlands Police said it had dealt with these issues back in April, when the Chief Constable said nothing would give him more satisfaction than to see the bombers brought to justice. He said the case was not closed, but significant new information would be needed to bring prosecutions.
And I know I can speak for the whole force to say that it's been very much a sort of an open wound since the force was set up, and we would dearly love to be able to bring people to justice for the crime.
Yes, I hear the cry.
This song about the bombings is being released this week. And next month, on the night before the anniversary, many musicians will play at Birmingham Town Hall in a concert for the 21 victims. Keith Wilkinson, ITV News.
Well, on to other news, and a policeman has been injured after being shot in the eye with a suspected air gun during an incident in Staffordshire. The officer was shot after being called to a disturbance on Wat Tyler Close in Rugeley last night. He's being treated at Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham. A 34-year-old man has been arrested and is in custody.
A school in Worcestershire, which was forced to close after a suspected outbreak of norovirus, has now reopened. 70 students and staff became ill last week at the Birchensale Middle School in Redditch. The building's been deep cleaned over the weekend.
Hereford United have been granted another extension to pay off its debt after the club's winding up petition was adjourned until December the 1st. It's been reported that a £1.5 million investment was promised at the High Court to cover the debts. It is the 7th adjournment the club has received.
A mother who suffered pre- and postnatal depression is backing a campaign to make sure all women suffering from mental health problems around the time of having a baby receive the care they need.
Claire Crane from Lichfield spent 4 months in a mother and baby psychiatric unit to treat her postnatal depression. But the Maternal Mental Health Alliance says many women don't receive the right treatment because of a postcode lottery. Here's our health correspondent, Victoria Davis.
Noah was a much-wanted baby, but when he was born, his mother Claire felt no bond and wanted to give him away.
After he was born, I just didn't feel like he was mine. I couldn't understand where he'd come from and that he was actually ours. I began to just feel like I couldn't live this life and I had to escape somehow.
Luckily, Claire's GP, health visitor and family recognised she was unwell. Claire, who lives in Lichfield, spent 4 months in a mother and baby psychiatric unit being treated for postnatal depression, something she believes saved her life.
It can take you to places and thoughts that you never even knew existed. Receiving the help that we did get has saved me, really, and it's given me the chance to be with my little boy, but also to feel the way that I should feel about him.
But sadly, there are many women who can go unrecognised because of a postcode lottery. According to the Maternal Mental Health Alliance, a woman suffering from postnatal depression in Herefordshire may struggle to access the right treatment, as no specialist maternal health teams exist. But cross the border into Worcestershire and accessing the right treatment is likely to be far easier, as there is basic provision with access to specialists. But shockingly, this map reveals the whole of the West Midlands falls short of meeting nationally agreed standards, with only North Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent coming close.
We need to make sure that there isn't any unwarranted variation across the West Midlands. We need to make sure that it doesn't matter whether you live in Birmingham, Solihull, Sandwell, where there is provision, or whether you live in Hereford, where there's a lot less provision. We need to make sure that women can access help in all areas.
Tomorrow, campaigners will put a report before Parliament outlining the problem, as experts say investing in maternal mental health will not only help more families, but will save the country money too.
We estimate that if we spent £337 million...
And Grainger and Wesley Joyce met after she appealed for a donor in her local newspaper. Callum Watkinson has the story.
Kidney failure was a complication of Sally Ann Grainger's cystic fibrosis. 4-hour dialysis sessions, part of her life. She's now recovering with a new kidney, a kidney donated by a man she didn't know.
I think it's an amazing kind act of generosity. Not many people would just do that for a stranger. It's normally families or close relatives or close friends, but never a stranger. But to know that there are people out there that would do that, it's amazing. So I take my hat off to the gentleman who gave me his kidney.
Gentleman is a label Wesley Joyce is still getting used to. A former paratrooper, he once served time for assault. But when Sally got her story in the Worcester News, he contacted her immediately. He may now be a kidney down, but says he's gained much more than that.
It feels like I've got a best friend, and a friend for life, and with all of her family. I've now met her mum, her dad, her daughters, and it's hard to explain how that feels. Well, it's impossible to explain unless you've done it.
He laughs at any suggestion he's a hero, but for son Leighton, the organ donation was an act of redemption.
I've got a spare one, so it's just weighing me down.
It's like a clean slate. He started fresh ever since he read the paper and saw the appeal on the front headline, and it's wiped the slate clean, really, I think.
While pleased for Sally, doctors warned that DIY donor hunting could swamp the system with false leads and favours the media savvy over those whose need might be greater.
It does bypass the organ allocation system, and I think if there are people who are that generous and they do want to help people who need an organ transplant, then there are resources available, such as the Give a Kidney charity, which promotes this kind of thing. They can give the kidney to someone, but it should go to someone who is the most needy, and that should be based on the allocation system.
And while Sally agrees the usual channels are a safer option, she's just happy to be on the mend, thanks to the kindness of one perfect stranger. Callum Watkinson, ITV News.
Amazing. Now, the Duchess of Cornwall was the guest of honour at Birmingham Cathedral today.
She was there to help school children celebrate Harvest Festival. Young people from across the city brought food grown at their schools for a special service at the cathedral.
The harvest boxes were then collected by a horse-drawn trolley that once was used to bring food to the city from local farms. The produce was then taken to the Birmingham Central Food Bank.